Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
She was Theresa May's personal choice for the job, and she was picked in part because, as an eminent New Zealand judge, she was perceived to have spent her life definitively outside of the British establishment. But tonight, Dame Lowell Goddard has quit as head of the inquiry into child sex abuse and allegations of a cover-up at the heart of Westminster. She had been accused of spending too much time out of the country whilst picking up a very considerable amount of money, around £500,000 of taxpayers' cash a year in all. She is the third head of the inquiry to quit, and it hasn't even got going yet. There probably isn't a direct connection to some absolutely shocking statistics published today on child sex abuse in the country more generally, but they certainly did underline the scale of the problem.
Its mission to investigate horrific abuse of children in England and Wales, to find out why victims were not protected, to prevent it ever happening again. Now, once again, this major inquiry is in chaos. Dame Lowell Goddard suddenly stepping down, accused of spending too much time abroad, despite her initial determination to find the truth.
And no one will have immunity from scrutiny by virtue of their position.
She always was a high-risk appointment by Theresa May. She come from a country 10,000 miles away, no real knowledge of the British system.
The New Zealand High Court judge was appointed to lead the inquiry in February last year. After the resignation of two previous chairwomen, Baroness Butler-Sloss stood down in July 2014 after admitting a personal conflict of interest. Lawyer Fiona Woolf was also forced to quit after links with ex-Home Secretary Lord Britton, who'd been accused of sexual abuse. It's estimated the inquiry has cost £17 million already, and it's due to take 5 years.
I'm absolutely certain that the inquiry will continue, will be effective. It's a huge undertaking, a massive task, and a huge burden to anybody who takes on that role of chair. But I'm confident that with the support of the general public, that the inquiry will continue and do the job that was given to it.
It's just another abuse. When you're persuaded to come forward and announce the abuse that's happened to you, some people have never spoken about it, and then to be let down in this way. So you have to look at who appointed Goddard. She was never the right person, obviously.
Tonight, Dame Lowell Goddard said, "I am confident there have been very real gains for victims in getting their voices heard." As for Home Secretary Amber Rudd, she's seemingly relaxed, saying the shock departure of the inquiry head was the right decision. Angus Walker, News at 10.
Well, let's move on now to the figures I referred to just a moment ago. In the first study of its kind, the Crime Survey for England and Wales found that 1 in 14 adults in England and Wales was sexually abused as a child. Over 500,000 women aged 16 to 59 were raped as children, and so were 102,000 men in the same age range. 3 out of 4 of those victims said they did not report what happened at the time. Well, our correspondent, Sally Lockwood, joins me now. He's been looking at this evening. Sally, we've had Jimmy Savile. We've had many other abuse scandals over the last 5 to 10 years, I suppose. Perhaps it's just my naivety, but this somehow seems extraordinarily shocking tonight. The scale, the numbers. Is that fair? Fair thing to say?
Absolutely. We're very familiar with allegations against celebrities, public figures. They get a lot of publicity. But what this report has done is reveal that the majority of abuse isn't committed by strangers, but in the home, and that the majority of victims know the perpetrators. What's also astonishing is how few victims came forward. Now, the reasons given was embarrassment, humiliation, or thinking that they would not be believed. Now, this is the first time the ONS has ever asked this question in a survey, which suggests a real culture change in the way we're dealing with allegations of child abuse as a nation, and that people now have the confidence to come forward. We must remember, though, that this survey was conducted anonymously. We can't scrutinise these claims, but it does suggest that child abuse was far higher than previously thought, and these figures only reinforce the need for this child abuse inquiry and the need to find someone to lead it again very soon.
Yes, someone else, it must be said. the fourth person. But there we are. Sally, thank you very much indeed.
And let's turn to the front of The Guardian and the story that we've been covering in quite some depth today. The third chairwoman of the Independent Child Sex Abuse Inquiry has stepped down, the third to step down. It's an inquiry in total chaos, isn't it?
It is beyond parody. I mean, it was bad enough when the first one stepped down, terrible when the second one stepped down, and now a third one. And it does beg the question whether anybody with sufficient qualifications is going to be willing to take on this completely poisoned chalice. And of course, it is an immensely important inquiry, this. People's lives have been ruined. There are serious, serious things to investigate. But for some reason, whoever's in charge of this, and ultimately the buck stops with the Home Office, but it is a new Home Secretary now, can't seem to find the right sort of person to lead it.
And one of the things I find quite shocking about it, I suppose, is, you know, it was 2014 that we had the original inquiry set up. As you said, this is the third person to sort of take on the mantle of chairing it. She's been in post for a year. Not that much has happened by the sounds of things. There haven't been any sort of formal public
Except she has taken a lot of money.
But she's taken a lot of money. So she's on a £360,000 salary. She's from New Zealand, so she's got a big travel allowance. She's got a rental allowance of over £100,000 to live in the UK. So I want to know, kind of, is that, you know, she's resigning after a year. Is some of that money going to go back to the Home Office?
And it seems to me it's not as if the work that has been done, such as it is, can just be taken on by whoever is the next chairman of this inquiry and added to. They will want to do that work themselves.
I agree,
again.
and I think Sonia raised a really important point there, which is an awful lot of public money went to this very highly qualified judge. Why did they appoint somebody from New Zealand? You know, that had trouble written all over it right from the start. How can anyone do the work at that long distance? New Zealand's 12 hours behind, ahead of us. I think they're 12 hours.
Doesn't matter.
12 hours ahead of us. They are 12 hours ahead of us. And, you know, it just seems it was a remarkably stupid decision in the first place.
I suspect they probably found it very difficult to get someone to take it on after you'd already seen two women resigning over this. And I think there's a big question now. I mean, it's obviously really critical for girls and children who've had their lives ruined by this to get some answers, for us to consider how we can make sure it doesn't happen again. But the scope of the inquiry was so broad, and I think there's a question now, should we be keeping the scope that broad, or should we be sort of making it a bit narrower and having 2 or 3 different inquiries going on at the same time with 2 or 3 different people looking at it?
I mean, we are still in some doubt, aren't we, as to exactly why she has stepped down from a post. A two-sentence letter of resignation.
Yeah, I thought that was a little curious.
Which was a bit terse, but in her statement she does mention the fact that perhaps it would have been better for her to start completely afresh. And that is where we find ourselves now, isn't it?
I mean, she did say that, but she kind of, I suppose she sort of knew the terms of what she was taking on. There's also been quite a lot of reporting in the Telegraph over the last kind of week or so about the deal that she had in terms of salary, about the fact that she'd spent 70 days over in New Zealand, some of which was holiday, but some of which was apparently working on the inquiry from there. So there'd started to be some questioning and scrutiny in the press, and I suspect that was probably one of the reasons why she's decided to go.